At the end of his work, The Dialectics of the Abstract and the Concrete in Karl Marx's Capital, Ilyenkov provides a brilliant recreation of the way that Marx went on to concretely understand the concept of value. And I already touched upon this on a couple of occasions before. It is a very, very important chapter in this work. The fifth chapter, the final chapter, it is subdivided into smaller chapters. And the final small chapter is all about the theory of value and how Marx actually walked that whole mile for us. And all we need to do is study it and put it to use, because the secret that Ricardo and the other political economists of the 19th century couldn't quite explain, couldn't quite grasp, Marx did. He did explain, he did resolve the mystery of value, not only the exchange value, but the use value as well. And if you are familiar with Capital, this is probably something that you've gathered from it, especially if you were able to go through the entire 3 volumes. Ilyenkov really showcases how Marx does this ascension from the abstract to the concrete, and he does that by, of course, looking at the empirical data, and then he doesn't transform it. He reflects it accurately in the ideal, and then we can check it. We actually can check it in the modern times. And Marina Burik does that. Marina Burik, the philosopher, contemporary one that I referred to last summer, she does that. She continues on that journey. So I am going to read her work, A Virtualized World of Capitalism. Once again, I actually ordered a paper copy because I think with this newfound enlightenment that Ilyenkov provided for me, I'm going to be able to gain even more from Marina's work. But the secret of exchange value and use value is that in commodity production, use value is not even necessary nowadays, but that is, of course, a conversation for another day. What happens to the object that is a commodity for exchange, the use value and the exchange value cannot coexist in one object at once in the process of exchange. But they do. And this is where a lot of the critics of Marx were raving about how Marx is contradicting himself, how he puts together these 2 statements where the use value cannot be attributed to the object in the process of the exchange. But I think a great little saying can really help you understand what Marx meant. And this is a very simple, very popular saying. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. This is what Marx meant, okay? This is what he's been explaining in excruciating detail with the example of these 2 objects. I'm not going to repeat the whole thing. One has to embody the other in the eyes of those who are participating in this exchange. So one of the people who participates in the exchange has to see the other object, the other person's object, as use value. But this person cannot see its own object as the use value, because if he does, then it's going to be a contradiction, because again, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. So to him, this object that he wants to exchange for this other object has to become exchange value only. But in the moment of exchange, those 2 objects, they become both at the same time. So for one person, one object is the use value, but their own object is the exchange value. And for the opposite party, the same thing happens. Their object is exchange value, but the other's object is use value. So this kind of transformation happens, but it actually doesn't. The object itself, its qualities are not changed, but it does happen. And then one person does not have the object anymore that they had as an exchange value, but now they acquire another object that is now their use value. That's a very simple reiteration of the simple commodity exchange. So it may appear as if it is a very simple thing, but Marx's assertion that one object cannot but must be both during the process of exchange is revolutionary, is absolutely groundbreaking, because it showed us this conflict that appears during the process of exchange. And this conflict is not singular. It is a universal conflict. You as a consumer, as the buyer of goods, as the person who participates in the exchange, may not think or may not feel as if it is a conflict. But in the fact that this object to you all of a sudden becomes only its exchange value and stops being the use value, is unnatural, so to speak, contradiction. And it is not resolved in any way or form, Marx argues. He argues that in the historical process, this continued to create boundaries for the exchange of commodities to take place as a universal occurrence. And then money came as the solution. Money came as an equivalent, as a universal equivalent to solve seemingly this problem. But Marx showcases how it did not. Money only resolved on the surface this contradiction. It only created a one-sided occurrence where use value, the commodity, is exchanged for money, which is not use value. And there is a whole argument about this, but money is not use value because you cannot consume money as is. So money becomes this means to an end. So when you sell something for money, you use this money then to buy something, right? To get some kind of other use value. And thus, the same kind of cycle happens again with the means or by the means of the usage of money. Now, the contradiction itself that the products, the commodities that are produced for exchange, they have to be alienated necessarily from the people, and that they cannot be these two things, these two entities at once, but they have to in the exchange process. This contradiction is not ultimately resolved by money. And this is what Marx argues will necessarily lead to the overcoming of the commodity production. And we will have to face the fact that it's the use value that is necessary, right? It's not the exchange value. We can create, using advanced productive capacities, we can create as many use values as necessary. We don't have to have commodities. We can make things that serve the people, right? And this is socialism and communism. Okay, so this all is brilliant to me. So if you are familiar with capital, none of this is going to be new to you. But if you do need a little help understanding, making sense of capital, I highly, highly recommend you read this work by Evald Ilienkov. It is an amazing textbook, I would argue, that explains step by step Marx's processes. He explains how the ascension from the abstract to concrete happens in everybody's ideal, not just Marx's. Every one of us participates in the exact same process, but we may not do it consciously. So the exchange value is not a necessary part of replicating human life. Commodity production is not necessary to replicate or reproduce human life. The invisible hand of the market is this process, but at a very large scale, when you gain newer, more advanced type of developments where money all of a sudden becomes a commodity too, and financial capital appears, etc., etc. But this, of course, is not something that I'm going to touch upon in this video. So if you haven't read Ilienkov's Dialectics of the Abstract and the Concrete, what are you doing? Run and read it. It is one of the best works that I've ever read in my life, and I'm so excited to read more of Ilienkov and more of the Marxist philosophers. So let me know what you think. Hopefully this all made sense. I hope you have a great day today. Consider supporting me on Patreon. Do take care of yourself and your community first. Subscribe to me on all the other social media accounts, even though I don't do much there, and I'll talk to you sometime later.